Hello, everybody. We've got a show that promises to be at least mildly interesting for your listening and watching enjoyment. I'm your host, Jared Correia. I'm the CEO of Red Cave Law Firm Consulting. For the monologue, I'm talking about how lawyers may be particularly well suited to utilize artificial intelligence. In the interview, we've got Karin Conroy, the principal of Conroy Creative Counsel. In the counter program, we're celebrating Karin coming over to the legal broadcasting company with a quiz focused on other famous but lesser Teamups. Now, let's discuss how and why AI should be an attorney's paradise. Clearly, artificial intelligence is a dominant force in modern society. Not only is everyone and their grandma using it, but there's also continuing pressure to build data centers to support its usage. So yes, that's why there's an ongoing national conversation as to whether it makes sense to see drinking water for bandwidth on AI. The whole thing gives new meaning to the term cooldown period. Of course, the fervor around AI doesn't appear to be cooling down anytime soon, and it's almost impossible to avoid using it as a business person because of the efficiency advantage it offers. But the question bears asking about how real humans fit into this feedback loop. Specifically, in this case, what value do lawyers continue to bring in a world where AI reigns supreme and can do a lot of the work that humans have done in the past faster and maybe better? The good news in this darkest of timelines is that at least right now, humans retain the top billing in the AI chain of command, and there's a whole heck of a lot of value that lawyers can bring the modern world of practice, in which the use of artificial intelligence is quickly becoming a required tool, like the use of the cloud before it. Attorneys, as it turns out, are almost perfectly constructed to prompt and iterate with AI. That's good news. AI chatbots, how humans best communicate with AI in its current version, are built on natural language processing. The appeal of artificial intelligence is largely that you can get it to do things simply by writing at it or talking to it, just like you could do with another normal human being, including your staff human beings when you instruct them what to do. Lawyers are masters of rhetoric and rhetorical devices. Attorneys are precise and advocate effectively. In fact, a number of lawyers have told me about how intimately they understand the AI thought process because they think in the same way. Lawyers are the humans most like AI, so they engage with it better than maybe any other humans. That means that you have the potential to use AI to increase your work volume without losing quality and probably improving quantity to boot. No profession is more ready to use AI as a thinking partner than the legal industry. Now, artificial intelligence also requires oversight in the same way that a brilliant child would. AI is an affirmation engine. It will tell you whatever you want to hear unless you challenge it. Attorneys are skilled at building discourse and addressing various shades of argumentation, pro and con. Not only can lawyers take an AI output and iterate with the system in order to generate a more refined and nuanced response using their acquired acumen and experience, attorneys also have an increased shot of getting to the right answer faster, one shot or few shot prompting due to their writing skills, meaning they'll burn through fewer tokens in the iterative process. Attorneys using AI can create effective prompts and review them efficiently to mold the correct work product. They are the humans in the loop both at the beginning to ensure that the right data, information, restrictions, and instructions enter the chat, but also at the end to professionalize the output result. Savvy lawyers have told me that they can save 80 to 90% of their time on projects using AI. Yes, 80 to 90%, while achieving better results in association with the tool. Of course, this means that the attorney is always ultimately on the hook for the work product developed, which is maybe the most important reason lawyers aren't being eliminated from the AI equation anytime soon. Some body, not something, has to be liable for malpractice, right? If you're a lawyer who's AI curious but hasn't yet stepped into the breach, understand that artificial intelligence may be the most perfect application ever built for the profession. Wow, that was pretty rosy for me. Now, if you're a lawyer who's marketing curious, we've got a great guest coming up next. That's Karin Conroy of Conroy Creative Counsel, who's been helping law firms to market and podcasting about the topic. since podcasting became a thing. She's a real OG. She's up next. Well, I've effectively run out of things to say, which is awkward because this is a podcast. I'm going to think deeply about my favorite pancake recipes while the camera rolls and the mic records. No, I'm actually going to fight the urge to talk about pancake recipes, although there are several delightful options. Our next guest knows that the number one rule of podcasting is that you have to say things. So let's bring her on. It's Karin Conroy, the principal of Conroy Creative Counsel. Welcome to the show, Karin.
So I like blueberry pancakes. And do you like the savory ones? Or
I have to say, like, the consistency of blueberries bothers me. I'm a big consistency person when it comes to food. They're too soft.
And here's another thing with blueberries that one of my kids can't stand is that they are not reliable. Some of them are like very tart and some of them are kind of smushy. Maybe that's where you're going with it, the consistency issue.
I mean,
I like it. It's like a surprise. You never know.
I like a good chocolate chip pancake.
Oh, okay. So back at like the
Lots of
4-year-old.
Yeah, like I'm basically a 4-year-old with my food taste.
Okay, all right.
I will say, if I could give a pro tip on blueberries. Frozen blueberries. You ever do frozen blueberries?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, they're 1,000 times
Wyman's
better.
frozen blueberries.
Yep. Yeah.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
I could eat an entire bag of Wyman's
Yes.
frozen blueberries.
There are also dried blueberries at Trader Joe's. Highly recommend. That was a solid like toddler snack back in the day.
So welcome to Blueberry Talk. It's my new podcast. We're all gonna.
I feel like it's very niche. Like we are going to find our audience.
I feel like the blueberry people are going to come out for this. What was the girl in? Was it Violet Beauregard in Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory who turns into the
Oh
big
my gosh! Yes,
blueberry.
Yes, 100%. I love quoting Willy Wonka. There's just like a plethora of options there.
What a tremendous movie Willy Wonka is.
Seriously.
If I can give a shout out to another podcast that I've talked to Evan about before. Have you ever listened to a podcast called What Went Wrong? It's about movies.
I think I've heard of it, but I have not listened to that one.
Great podcast. They talk about all the weird shit that goes down on the in the making of movies. And they did an episode about Willy Wonka the other day.
Yeah.
Interesting fact about that movie is that when Gene Wilder comes out and pretends to be crippled and does the flip, that was completely a Gene Wilder thing. That wasn't the script. He did that on his own.
I love that.
Now, people are not going to believe this, but this is the first time we've ever spoken.
I know.
Can you confirm that?
It's really weird. And I can confirm, but I feel like maybe there's some time over the last bunch of decades that maybe we were in the same room.
Bunch sounds like a lot.
More
I
than
wasn't
one.
born in the 1930s.
Are you sure?
My interests lie. Maybe I was. I feel like there has to have been a I don't know, ABA Tech show.
Yeah, well, and we're OG lawyerist people back when lawyerist was an entirely different thing.
When it was like a website with product stuff. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and like contributors.
Yes.
And we all just wrote, and it was run by entirely different people, and like, you know, that has had its life journey and changes, and it was a whole different thing. But I started writing on lawyers.
Lives, I feel like largely.
That's what I was just saying to Evan, because I started writing on Lawyerist at the end of 2009. And so then I started in 2010. I started that Best Law Firm website contest. And
wait, you started that? I didn't know that.
Yes, I did. And I want to say this to everyone. I showed it, and I actually have had
get credit for that. I had no idea.
They do give me credit for it.
Okay,
but I was on a recent podcast for Lawyerist, and they like talked about how 15 years of the contest, and I started it and whatever, but somehow it doesn't. But
is it still ongoing or no?
It is. It is by far and away the highest trafficked thing that has pulled in the traffic. At one point, I don't know if you were there, but Sam was paying us based on the traffic of our posts. Were you there during that era?
No.
And he had to stop that because he's like, Karin,
You're making
I'm just
too much.
paying you for that one. Yeah. And then I did it every year. And so then it would just kind of like, refresh and I was like, listen.
So that's still ongoing. So people should check that out. Are you
just
taking so how's that work? Do you take like nominations?
I don't take credit.
People
They put my name.
self-nominate?
You do. You self-nominate. At one point, they didn't allow you to do that. Like you had to get your friends to nominate you for you. But I'm no part of it anymore. Like just from time to time, they'll say
It still
like,
exists.
"Hey, thanks."
I have similar relationships, like the Lunch Hour Legal Marketing podcast. I started that one like back in the day and gave it up.
Nice.
So we all move on.
Some of us.
Let me ask you this. So you are in the marketing space. You love alliteration, clearly.
I do, with C's.
So how did you get into marketing in the first place?
Yeah, it's kind of a long journey.
Okay. Well, explore the studio space. Feel free.
All right. So I was living in this beach town in Laguna Beach. I lived in this tiny little studio right by, if anybody's been to Laguna Beach, like the main beach. And I walked into town and worked at an internet cafe. It's a very artistic, funky little town. And the next town north is Newport Beach, which is the opposite. It's very in your face, money, whatever. But Laguna is like, everybody walks around in flip-flops and shorts, and you would never know the wealthy people. Like they would come rolling into this internet cafe, checking their email, and they would ask me, like, how do I check my email? How do I check my Yahoo, Netscape? Because we didn't have phones. So let's go back.
Warren Buffett's like, how do I log into my AOL account?
100%. It is that level of guys that are, flying the private jets and whatever, but they're flopping around. They don't know how to check their email. And some of them don't know how to type, like literally. And so I would sit down and help them and whatever. And so then these websites started, and this was a whole like new world. And
this is around like 0405 ish.
This was before that. It was like 99.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. 99, 2000. So I started, long story short. Well, no, it's not going to be short. So, long story long. So I started building websites, and this was like, the time of like the Yahoo page and like Ask Jeeves and Netscape, Napster. Like I was downloading Napster on one computer, over on the other computer.
LimeWire?
Yes, the whole LimeWire was after Napster. This was before the whole Napster fallout. This was go farther back. And so like people would do these like personal sites where they had like the spinning hamsters, and it was a whole
those were the
other
days.
thing. So I decided that I was going to actually. So I had already done my undergrad. I decided I was going to actually like get a thing behind this and go back to school. So I did a design degree, and this is where I think my kind of point of differentiation and my core kind of approach to all of this started is in design and and I was just following like, hey, I really enjoy this, but what the part I enjoy is the look of it. And like making it look really nice. And, the tech part, whatever, like I can do that, and I'm smart and I can use that side of my brain, but I want to make it look nice. And then I want to figure out like, what does that mean? How do I do that? And so I did my first degree, which is at UC Irvine. Yep. And then did that for a while. And then I eventually went back and got my MBA. And so then I was like doing the business side of it and building that side of it. So basically, the middle part of that story is that internet cafe went under. I started kind of freelancing. I took the majority of all those clients just to, on my own, freelancing.
Not too far. So did you ever end up working for anybody, or did you go right from freelancing to starting your own company?
No. I worked for Century 21. I was their director of marketing.
Oh, so, the real estate company.
The real estate company. Okay. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I had whole teams of people, and that was while I was getting my MBA. and I was also teaching design and marketing classes at the same time.
Gotcha.
So Photoshop, all that stuff. So I was doing like a whole lot of stuff at that time. And then we had the first recession. And that's when I really started.
Good times.
Yeah. But that was when I really started focusing on legal stuff because I had done my MBA. I thought I was going to get into consulting. Like that was in my mind, the plan was I'm going to go make a ton of money being a consultant for, and so my original company name was Conroy Consults. And then I switched it at some point.
You were like, not enough C's. We need like one more C
right. Exactly.
to make this work.
Exactly. And so then it became Conroy Creative Counsel.
That's cool.
And,
I mean, it is a cool company name. No, I like it.
That's right.
And I can see how it appeals to lawyers too. Like the branding
right. Well, it's
is
going to
good.
be Creative Counsel, and that was already taken. And then, like when I was going through that name change, I really felt like my face and name were a huge part of the whole existence of it, and so I wanted to keep Conroy on there. So
I want to see I'd like to see an internet store where you can maybe expound on the alliteration further, like Conroy Creative Counsel corn chips or something like that. I would buy those.
Or the podcast, which is Counsel Cast, which is another couple C's.
Okay, so yes, so let's talk about that because you launched a podcast that was not your first podcast, right? You had a podcast with other people, co-hosts.
Whoa, you have done your research. Right? This goes way back. Yes. Okay, so I graduated from my MBA in 2009. And two of my best friends and we decided, like, we had this closing residential thing where we're all like, oh, we're going to keep in touch. And we decided to start a podcast. This was way before podcasts were a thing.
Right.
So,
2009 was, that's when I started podcasting too. I remember.
But nobody was doing it.
Right. I remember I told my mom, like, I'm starting a podcast. And she's like, what is a podcast?
What is that?
Yes.
Same. Yes.
Right.
And I did the same thing to my parents. And they were like, I'm like, it's a radio show. They're like, okay.
Remember when you
whatever.
used to listen to Orson Welles on the radio? Yeah.
And it was like the size of an ottoman.
Right. So that was early days, honestly. And
Super
you guys
early
did
days.
that on your own?
We did. And it was just for fun. And they would physically come to my house. I would cook dinner. We had mics on my kitchen table. And it was amazing. And we just reviewed business books. And these guys, it was very, like, not dissimilar from this show because we would sit around and drink and just talk so much shit about these business books and had the best times. And we were getting all these comments.
Idea.
It was so fun.
Business books are fucking terrible.
But I would sit there and I'd be laughing. And the comments were always like, why does the girl cackle so much? So then it just made me laugh harder.
I mean, I don't know. Like, you put yourself out there, there's always going to be haters, whatever.
That's
haters
right. That's exactly it. That's
that's a cool idea for a show. So, like, were you freelancing at that point or did you have like a business? So you could,
I was at Century 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you weren't actually taking like active clients at that point.
I was doing stuff kind of on the side, but this was entirely for fun. Like this was not like we're trying to, at some point we all talked about like, we should write a book or something, but it was literally like, we love getting together and having dinner and sitting around and having fun. And I love reading. Like I read a lot. And so we would just tear these books apart. We had this like diagram. We had an index where we would rate the books, and it was on like quality, and then we had like drink things that we would. It was very nerdy, but we had so much fun.
Well, you're reading business books, so like, did the star rating system only go up to 2?
There are some good business books.
I have a thing about I hate business books so much.
I feel like we could have a moment talking about business books because there's some really good ones out there, and there are a lot of crap.
I know that people love business books, so can we take a small detour and tell me business books that you think are good?
I love Malcolm Gladwell. I absolutely think that And the reason his are so good is because his mother was an English teacher. And so he knows how to write. And it's not just like this, and it's not woo. Like, I do not like the business books that are like, let me tell you about our journey. Let's talk about mindset, whatever. I want to talk about actual data and things that are super interesting and stories that you could talk about. So our podcast was called Cocktail Party Statement because our marketing professor in business school, at the end of every class, we were doing the fully employed program where we were working all day and then going to class at night. And so at the end of every night, there would oftentimes be these cocktail parties that we would go to because this is what you do in business school. And he would say, okay, there's a lot of drinking. You got to make it through. So he would say at the end of every class, so if you're going to a cocktail party tonight, what's your cocktail party statement? And he would go around the room and call people out, and you had to be ready. And so the whole time we're sitting there in every class, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what's my cocktail party statement about whatever we're talking about tonight? And we would be talking about a case study or whatever. And so that was how we got the name of our book. And that's the same idea with Malcolm Gladwell's stuff, where he tells these stories and he talks about the difference in the way, like there's outliers, there's a bunch of other ones, but the difference that it makes to learn math as an Asian person versus a Western person, and the way that their language structure works in the way that they talk about math as opposed to the way ours works. And like he kind of goes through the whole story, and it's stuff like that where I'm like, oh, that is so cool. And I want to tell somebody about that. Okay. As opposed to just like, let's talk about leadership and kind of crap, so
goals, leadership.
No.
This is why I only read 18th century British fiction.
I do love historical fiction, but it has to have a female twist on it because that pulls me in. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you eventually leave the friend show. You've got your company and you have the solo hosted show.
Yes.
What made you pull out of the other show?
So one of my friends died.
Oh, God. That's terrible.
It is. It was awful. He got this, so a combination. He died, but we also all started having kids.
That'll do it.
So it affected, so I was still on board. I will say, if the two of them were sitting here today, I would tell them, listen, I had a baby upstairs and I'm like running downstairs to record with you.
I think this show won awards, right? Like this was like a
it was
real
Webby
legit
nominated.
Podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my friend who passed away was Aaron Norris, and he is this genius in PR. And the three of us all did kind of a marketing focused MBA. And so he was always out there looking for awards. And he's like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it well. And so he got us a whole bunch of these communicator awards, and then he got us nominated for a Webby. And this was also kind of when the Webbies were not as big as they are now.
Yeah.
And so, we got nominated for a Webby, and we were up against NPR. It was like,
that's crazy.
What? Yeah. We did not win. I will say that now, but like, are you kidding me?
Still nominated.
So, yeah, totally.
Pulp Fiction didn't win Best Picture, so you're in good company.
Thank you. That makes me feel a lot better. But yeah, it was Webby nominated. But honestly, it was seriously just for fun. We had, but it was like such a cool, fun moment in all of our lives. And we all were reading more and we had more to talk about. And then we got together. And it was one of these things that we looked back on, at his funeral and everything else, where it was like, I am so glad that we put a structure around it to force ourselves to get together. And
yes,
we just absolutely loved it. Like, it was amazing.
Well, that's great. Do you have that time together? And then,
so my podcast now, I have a book review section, and it's a nod to that.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So the podcast you have now, it's a lot different doing a solo thing.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that transition like for you?
So I am very much, when it comes to like taking on a new project, I'm very logistical, analytical. Like, I kind of turn off the creative side because I know the creative side, that is the easy part for me. And I need to know, number one, is this something I can legitimately be consistent with and do it really well? And I'm not going to sit around. And I saw how long it took for us to get traction on our are fun podcasts. And if I'm doing this for business purposes, I don't have the patience for that. So how can I really like make a takeoff, do it really well, and make it so that I can continue doing it? Like that this is a part of my kind of weekly process that is realistic. So to be honest, there was a lot of it that was easier than trying to schedule time to physically get together between 3 people and like have dinner and whatever. That was taking us forever. And
that's
that was
a lot
worse.
of effort.
Yeah. And especially once we all started having kids and all that. So we were trying to kind of do the online version. It just it was not the same. It didn't have the same feel. And then Aaron got sick. So that part, just kind of fell apart. But I looked at that and I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, it's just me and then scheduling with my guests, and I can make that much more systematic.
Right.
And that became easier. So then I just created these amazing systems. I did find a podcast producer where I was like, I am not going to edit every show. I need it to be done well. Yeah. And that's just, I know that will be a deal breaker. Like I'm just not going to sit and, And then I originally was on Legal Talk Network, and I used that to really launch and to kind of overcome the impatience of the growth part of it. So
that makes sense.
Those were the main hurdles when I was looking to like set it up, that I was like, okay, I need a team. I need people to kind of help me make this happen. I need it to be a minimal commitment on my side. And then if I just need to show up and talk, I've got that. Like that's not a problem for me.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of people look at it, do the podcast thing.
Yeah.
All right. So you have this show, and like some marketing podcasts, I'm like, this is just terrible horse shit.
Yeah.
Like just like surface level bullshit that everyone knows. But your stuff is deeper than that.
Yeah.
And you cover like real topics and get into it. So, so part of that is the guests, right? So how do you go about finding guests who are knowledgeable enough to talk about that stuff?
It's a process.
Yeah.
And I will say in the beginning, I had a handful of people in mind. I spent a year guest podcasting on other podcasts, and it wasn't with the goal of like, I'm going to do sort of competitive research, but that's what it ended up being. And then partway through that year, I was on Steve Fretson's website, podcast.
We got a Fretson shout out today.
Link below. Subscribe, like. Yes.
Exciting.
And I think I was on more than once. And after, when we'd stopped recording and we were chit-chatting and whatever, I never say chit-chat. I don't know where that came from.
I feel like we need to bring it back. It's in some of those business books you've read, I'm sure.
Right. Malcolm Gladwell probably says chit-chat.
He's probably got a chapter on chit-chat in one of his books.
Chit-chat. The value of the chit-chat.
Yeah.
So Fretson and I were chit-chatting, and he's like, you should really have a podcast. I'm like, it's a lot of work. This is so much easier. I'll just show up on your podcast and whatever. And he says, this is years ago. So this is my 5th year of my podcast. This is before that. He's like, this is my greatest source of leads, bar none.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
I feel like that's what I think everybody's like, oh, I'm going to be a podcaster, and I got to be Mr. Beast to make that. I'm mixing genres, I know. I got to be Mr. Beast to make that work. But like, really, you just need like a dedicated audience of people who are going to refer you and become.
You need to know who you're talking to. Yeah. And that's where I think people get it wrong. They feel like, okay, I'm going to look at Brene Brown, Mr. Beast. I'm going to look at these big guys and I'm going to pretend to be them. And it's like, no. That's where it's all wrong. And so I had my podcast producer. Her name is Simona Constantini. She's amazing. She's in Canada because I love Canadians. And
really, who doesn't?
Seriously, they're the best.
Name a shitty Canadian. Go.
No, it's not possible.
You can't do it.
No. You got
so
nothing.
You got your producer.
Yeah. So I find her, and I'm looking for a producer, and I land on her site, and she's got some kind of good, like sort of boutique-y vibes, which that's what I'm looking for, like someone who I know is going to handle it.
Yeah.
But her website is hacked. and I can see it's like some Ukrainian flag, like it's bad hacked. And I was like, and I'm trying to contact her, and it's got like, it's not working. But I had this gut feeling about her. Meanwhile, I'm like talking to these other people, and I talked to this guy in England, and he was super arrogant. And he's like, I was going to do a Russian accent for some reason. I don't know why. That's
why we fucking separated from them. That shit right there.
Exactly. Exactly. The arrogance. Yeah. Seriously.
So you're back to your Canadian producer.
I'm also Irish,
website.
so like I've separated from the English in more than one way.
Oh, good for you. You've done it twice. Okay. Congratulations.
So I'm talking to this English guy, and he's saying, I knew instantly, like, this is not my guy, but he's telling me, okay, so what platform are you going to use for this podcast? And I was like, I think we're going to just use Zoom, because this is the majority of the podcast I've been on. At this time, we're using Zoom. And he's like, oh, no. You have to use Riverside. And this was way before Riverside was a thing. So I'm like, thank you very much for that info. I will take that and run with it, and I will never talk to you again. So I reach out to Simona, and I'm like, hey, by the way, your website is hacked. And
unless you're involved in Ukraine in some way, which maybe you are. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, maybe you're trying to get into my email and my financial, but your picture looks real.
Yeah.
And so I help her clean up her website. And first of all, she's like, who are you? Because like your website is hacked in an email that usually doesn't even make it through to the inbox, right? Like, I sound sus. And I'm like, I have a marketing company, and your website's hacked. And by the way, will you produce my podcast? And she's also sus about me. And so we kind of come to this meeting, and I'm like, I feel like you're my person, but also you need to clean up your website. And it's this weird conversation where within 5 minutes, I was probably less than 5 minutes, within a minute or two, both of us were like, this is it. And at the time, she wasn't even sure if podcasting was going to be her thing. And it ended up, she is now everywhere. Like her name is all over. She speaks for podcasting. This is like her thing. So
That's a business book. From hacked website to podcast producer extraordinaire.
To podcasting.
Random House. So you're listening?
Influencer. Right. Yes.
That's cool. What a great story.
Yeah. So she's amazing.
And you're still working together, I'm assuming, at this point?
We are. Yeah. Yeah. What was the question? I don't even know how.
We don't really do questions. We just do conversations here. I got one last question for you before we move into the next segment.
Okay.
Which is, podcasting was an audio form to start with.
Yeah.
And I had someone who contacted me the other day, and they're like, I want to start an audio podcast. And I was basically like, don't even bother.
No.
Like, you got to you want to talk a little bit about that to finish things out?
Yeah. So originally, and this also goes back to my friend Aaron, who it was always way, way, way ahead of things. And the third friend, there's three of us, me, Aaron, and my friend Phil, that started the Cocktail Party Statement. And me and Phil talk all the time about, like, man, if Aaron was still here in this world of AI, what would he be doing? Because he was so far ahead. He would have been talking about AI in like 2020. And, so when we were doing our podcast, and we kept talking about like bringing it back to life. And he died in 2022. And before that, he was talking about how the podcast had to be focused in YouTube and video and all of that.
Which
way
is
back.
Early for that shit too. Yeah.
Way early. Way early. He would go to CES. The guy was in real estate investment. Like, the tech stuff was just his sort of
side life
passion project.
Like. Yeah.
Yeah, but he also brought it into, so he had a podcast for his real estate investment company, and there was just a whole kind of tech side of it that brought him forward in all of it. And so he was the one who really kind of opened my eyes to that. And I was like, listen, if we are going to record, why would I not do the video side of it and not use this piece of content? I'm going to go to the hassle of creating this content. Let's maximize its utility and get it out to as many platforms, as many places. And then initially I was like, let's do that for the first year or so and see what sticks. And like, let's get some data on this and figure out like what is really working. And there is no question that YouTube is number one. Like that is going forward. If you are not putting your podcast on YouTube, you're totally making a huge mistake. It's not just missing out, you're making a mistake at this point.
Will you come back for one last fun segment? Which may be fun, it may also be harrowing. It'll be somewhere in the middle of fun and harrowing.
Well, let's lean towards harrowing because then that'll like, pull people in.
Come back for the last harrowing segment. Karin, welcome back. How are you?
Oh, I don't know. I'm a whole different person.
Okay. That was unexpected. Let me do our little intro and then you'll know what you're getting into. Welcome to the Counter Program. It's a podcast within a podcast. This is a conversational space where we can address usually unrelated topics that I want to explore at a greater depth with my guests. Expect no rhyme and very little reason. Karin, today we're going to play an entirely new game that I created just for you. It's called Other Famous Teamups. Beyond the famous team up that's happening right now.
Okay.
Here's how it's going to work.
Okay.
I'm going to describe a surprising team up from across genres related to pop culture, and you just have to identify the parties. Simple and easy. Are you ready?
Okay. I don't know. I'm a little worried. I'm getting a little bit sweaty.
That's what everyone says. We should have like some deodorant tie-in here.
I feel like that would be a good branding. That would be a good branding move.
I do too.
I wonder if your listeners sweat when they hear that. Like they start to kind of get
they're all sweating right now. They're excited. They're getting very excited for the Counter Program.
Okay.
So if you know the answer, just shout it out. If not, I have multiple choice.
Okay.
So
we're
good. Doing all kinds of crazy shit here. So
all right. I'm glad that I can fall back on the multiple choice options.
Yes.
Because the one thing I learned from my SAT prep course was always choose C.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to go this time around, but we can try it.
Is there a C?
Yes, there will always be a C.
Okay, all right. Okay, now I'm feeling good.
Question number 1. In 1992, great times, these rival WWF wrestling icons briefly set aside their differences to form a short-lived tag team powerhouse called the Ultimate Maniacs. The tandem was so short-lived, in fact, that they only appeared together in one televised match before one of the tag team members quit the WWF forever. Tragic story.
And you thought this would be something I would know?
I don't know. I never.
I felt like you did your research.
One time we had like I'd say gentleman about 65-ish, and he was like, I know everything there is to know about Janet Jackson, which kind of shocked me.
That's amazing.
But that just happened.
Like you got to do your own thing. My WWF knowledge goes back to Jesse Ventura, the former Governor. Yeah.
Oh,
am I right?
Well, that's good. No, he's not involved at all.
Dang it.
But that means you have a little bit back catalog of knowledge. Okay, so is it Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior, or Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan?
I think it's B. I think it's Randy Savage.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Okay, how many points do I have so far? One?
We will give you 1 point for each correct answer. All right, that was really impressive.
Okay. I'm a good guesser.
Okay. So
I also am really lucky with parking spots.
Okay.
It's
this
like
is
karma.
Good to know.
Yeah.
All right, so there will be no parking challenge here.
Okay.
But we will continue on with our pop culture related questions. Let's see. We've never had anyone go perfect in
that's
I want to say
listen.
17 years of podcasting.
Okay.
This could be it.
All right.
So
should I open
jinx you,
Google
but I
over in the
kinda
tab
do.
over in the corner?
I mean, you could. You know what's great about this is that people don't Google, which I really appreciate.
Am I the first one to suggest that?
Oh, no. People have suggested before, but they're like, that feels like cheating. Plus, we get multiple choice. All right. Number 2.
Okay. All right.
In a 1977 televised Christmas special, these two famous singers teamed up for an unlikely duet of The Little Drummer Boy and Peace on Earth, as well as acting out scenes from Charles Dickens' novels together. Do you need multiple choice? It sounds like you might know this one.
I can picture it. I need the multiple choice, though.
You're probably going to get it if you can picture it. Paul McCartney and Marvin Gaye.
No.
Louis Armstrong and Michael Jackson. David Bowie and Bing Crosby.
C.
David it's Bowie always and Bing Crosby.
Yes,
it's always
right.
Yeah, this
right.
is it.
Especially in this show. Because, you know, we talked earlier about all the C alliterations.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's perfect. I didn't realize that. I was not even doing that on purpose.
I was a step ahead.
All right, number 3.
Okay.
Perfect so far.
I know. I feel like we should stop here.
But we won't. In 1996, this writer and singer teamed up to create a 40-minute music video called Ghosts, which set a Guinness record for the longest music video ever at that time, in which the singer played 5 different roles and financed the entire production for $15 million. 1996, 40-minute video called Ghosts, singer and author.
Oh, stop.
Team up.
This is where you've decided that I'm not going to have a perfect streak.
This was preordained. I can give you the multiple choice.
Okay. This is going to be a long shot.
I think you're a good guesser. So, was it Michael Jackson and Stephen King, Madonna and Joe Hill, or Whitney Houston and Clive Barker? Michael Jackson and Stephen King, Madonna and Joe Hill, or Whitney Houston and Clive Barker?
I'm leaning towards B on this one. Madonna.
Okay. Want to talk me through it for a second?
No, it's just a feel. It's just a...
That's wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, sure you don't want to talk about it?
Right on your face as soon as I said that. You're like, are you sure you want to take another choice? Is it C?
No. Wow.
Oh.
Okay. Michael Jackson and Stephen King. So I thought maybe the Thriller.
What year was Thriller?
Type of vibe.
Yeah.
Thriller was 83. This was 96.
96. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even know about this until I did a little bit of research on it.
Yeah.
Right,
this is like
you're still doing well.
Deep cut.
You're 2 of 3. Next, this is a good one.
Okay.
You may know this one. We'll see. In 1978, a legendary Oscar-winning Hollywood director and actor signed a massive contract to team up with a budget California winery, resulting in a series of infamous, highly parodied television commercials, which included many, many drunken outtakes, which were released years later. Actor and winery. You want the multiple choice?
Yeah, because my first... Okay, yes.
You can take a guess if you want. I won't.
Well, my first thought was Francis Ford Coppola, but that wouldn't have been so guess. Parodied.
Yeah. All right, here, I'll give you the multiple choice.
Okay, because that wouldn't have been... Yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock and Ernest and Julio Gallo for the winery. Orson Welles and Paul Masson. John Huston and Carlo Rossi.
I think it was C. I think it was John Huston and Carlo Rossi. Oh, no, it was A. It was... Oh, wait. Because what was the winery in A?
Ernest and Julio Gallo.
That was the winery I was picturing. That's always the joke, because that's the box wine.
It's B.
But with
Orson
Hitchcock,
Welles and Paul Masson.
I feel like... I don't know, with Hitchcock... It was
B.
No!
The only one you didn't guess. Orson Welles.
I can feel the karma leaving the room.
Late period Orson Welles. There are some really funny outtakes when he's just throwing away these commercials.
How is it not a box wine though? Or is Paul Masson is that a box wine?
They may have boxes, but I know they have glasses. Like they actually have like glass bottles.
Glass bottles, and not just the plastic bag inside
Orson Welles does some cash and also some free wine.
Yeah, right.
He really did it upright at the end of his career.
Oh, so we're like 2 for 2.
That's okay. You got a chance. Okay, you got 2 more where you got a chance to save yourself.
Okay. All right.
Number 5. Beginning in 1914, these two titans of American industry embarked on annual, highly publicized summer road trips across America, roughing it in the wilderness together with their other oligarch friends. The Vagabond Tours, as they were called, occurred each year through 1924.
Okay.
So, which American industrialists basically camped together for the summer for 10 years? Was it Wilbur Wright and Alexander Graham Bell? Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse? Or Henry Ford and Thomas Edison? Wright and Bell, Tesla and Westinghouse, or Ford and Edison? This was actually a real thing that happened.
I'm leaning towards C, but it seems too obvious with the Ford and Thomas Edison.
C is always the right answer.
I know. Right? I feel like it is. I'm going to go with C. Because,
C is correct.
Yes. Okay. I'm redeeming myself. I'm on the redemption tour.
You've at least clinched the 50% finish. Yeah, this is a real thing.
Yeah.
Like they went around, they would do like specialized trips every year in a different part of the country.
You know, it was a different world back then. We went to, have you ever been to Hearst Castle?
William Randolph Hearst Castle?
Yeah.
I've not been, California. But I've heard of it. And
it is
figures
nuts.
Prominently in Citizen Kane on Orson Welles production.
Yes, yeah. Well, first of all, he was nuts, but also the castle itself is nuts. And it's so fun. But like the stories, and that was a similar era. And like they basically, to go from Los Angeles up to his castle would take at that time like the better part of a day. It's about 3 to 4 hours north of LA right now if you just drive a regular car. But that was a whole thing. Like they would be driving those little like Model T Fords and it would take the better part of a day, but all the Hollywood elite would go up there. And so that was where
caravans driving up there.
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah. But he had like hundreds of thousands of acres and like giraffe and like weird animals. Anyway, once again, also that same sort of era and the stories and the things they were doing back then, because like they didn't have TikTok.
Yeah. Or television or the internet.
Right. So like to keep themselves entertained was a whole other thing.
They do some weird shit, riding giraffes and stuff.
Exactly.
All right, I got one more for you, which is, this one's not going to be easy, so you'll need to use your guessing power. The last one is always the hardest.
Okay.
In 1975, a United States astronaut and a Soviet cosmonaut shared the first international handshake in space when their two shuttles successfully docked. In addition to being a successful test of the docking system, it was a powerful symbol of détente during the Cold War and paved the way for future U.S.-Russian collaborations. Who were the spacemen? No. Thomas Stafford and Alexei Leonov. I'm going to be bad with the Russian names. Neil Armstrong and Yuri Gagarin, or Buzz Aldrin and Valentina Tereshkova. Wow. Please don't write into us.
Exactly
Russian
right.
fans. Stafford and Leonov, Armstrong and Gagarin, or Aldrin and Tereshkova.
I think you do have a large Russian audience, right? Like a whole bunch of...
For a while, we were the #1 business podcast in Ghana, but I don't know what our Russian
in the top
penetration
25
is at this point.
Nice. I'm in the top 25 in Nigeria right now. I just got this yesterday. I know. On
Nigerians,
2 different...
subscribe to us too.
No, leave this one alone and leave mine alone. Like we can have parallel lives. Continue
subscribe
the
to
parallel.
both.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like the Neil Armstrong Yuri that one feels right to me. I don't know why.
Or it could be a red herring because Neil Armstrong and Yuri Gagarin are the most
there's
popular
something about that Yuri Grigorov, right? I feel like
Yuri Gagarin. I think he's the most famous cosmonaut. I think he was the first one in space.
And let's just say cosmonaut is a way cooler word than astronaut, I think.
I agree. Like no notes. Yeah. Definitely. So you think that's the one?
I do think that the Neil Armstrong is a red herring. So I'm okay. I'm backpedaling. I'm going to go with C. I'm going with C.
C, also a red herring.
Yes!
Buzz Aldrin.
Okay.
But, well, no, C is incorrect. It was also a red herring.
Dang it! Was it A?
Yeah.
It was A.
It was the most obscure of the astronaut-cosmonaut tandems.
Which makes the most sense, to be honest. Like the other ones are just you have no idea, so this sounds right. And then you have no idea, so this sounds right, number 2.
Exactly. You acquitted yourself quite well here today on
thank you.
Legal Late Night. Seriously. And this is why I like having intelligent people on the podcast who will suss things out.
Yeah.
Kudos to you.
Or just go with C.
Or C. I mean, C was right on the last one. There are a couple C's here, too.
At some point, you're going to be right.
A Karin Conroy story.
Yeah.
Creative.
Yeah.
Conroy Creative Counsel. I'm trying to come up with a tagline that says always bet on C. You ever play roulette? Always bet on C. But there's no letters on the roulette table. We'll workshop it.
Right. Yeah. No, maybe not bet on. Always choose C. Always, because there's a C in the choose. Always choose C. Yeah, I think that's a good option. One. Yeah. Bring it over to Claude. Thank you for
coming on.
Have Claude with the C.
Claude with the C. Claude with the C. This is delightful. We will have to see you again soon. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, that's a good one.
Thanks to our guest, Karin Conroy, who is the principal of Conroy Creative Counsel. To learn more about Karin and Conroy Creative Counsel, visit conroycreativecounsel.com. All C's, conroycreativecounsel.com. And don't forget to listen to Counselcast on the Legal Broadcasting Company. Now, because I'll always be a 90s kid who was the original voice of young Simba in The Lion King before dropping out, but whose true passion is burning CDs for anyone who would listen, I'm now just doing the modern version of that, which is creating Spotify playlists for every podcast episode that I record, where the songs are tangentially related to an episode topic. For this week's playlist, we've got more unexpected team-ups with weird duets, and it's brought to you by Bethlehem Steel. Actually, Bethlehem Steel is all out of business fully. Time to go on the Vagabond tour, I guess. Join us next time when I return my old parachute pants to Walmart. Or try to.